Well, then Deputy President Paul Mashatile has reportedly said that government is still trying to persuade Putin not to attend the BRICS summit in South Africa in person in August. He says the country is in a tricky situation because Russia wants Putin to attend physically, but South Africa is still a signatory to the Rome Statute, which means it is duty-bound to arrest him if he lands here. Let's speak to UJ African Diplomacy and Foreign Policy Chairperson and Director, Professor Landsberg. A very good evening to you, Prof. Good to have your time. So the Sunday Times reporting today that Mashatile said that South Africa has communicated a desire for Putin to join virtually, but that Moscow very much wants him to be here in person. How serious a development would that be if entirely true?
How serious a development will be if President Putin carries through with his wish? I mean, ultimately, I suppose South Africa might be forced at the 11th hour to stop that eventuality. I think there's something interesting that's going on here. Politics is being played, and I think South Africa is showing more of its hand than President Putin is showing at the moment. And I wish to agree with the analysts who said it is likely that President Putin will not attend. I think what Moscow is busy doing right now is looking for a almost face-saving strategic manner and reason as to why it cannot do. And if truth be told, President Putin faces a serious dilemma, challenges at home, not just by the Wagner Group. We still don't know whether it was a coup or not. For us to try and persuade President Putin to do it virtually, I don't think we're going to get our wish. He will make us wait, and he will do it on his terms, and he will do it as late as possible.
What ultimately do you think would drive that position if that's what's going on? Is it that Putin, because he's already faced the strongest challenge to his governance in the domestic area from the Wagner Group in the last month, would not want his Western foes, shall we say, to see him as a leader who in fact fears ICC consequences?
Yeah, no, I do think that the ramifications will be serious at home. There'll be a lot of drama. People on the streets, the opposition and civil society organizations, going haywire. The spotlight on South Africa. I don't think South Africa wishes to find itself on the wrong side of the court already. The precedent, as the previous analyst said, has been set in 2015 with the al-Bashir case, where the court was explicit that South Africa was in violation of its own constitution. Apart from that, South Africa is doing some very careful egg dancing at the moment with Washington. We have 3 ministers currently in Washington trying to persuade Washington not to shift AGOA and certainly not to push through with sanctions. So for us, there are domestic and foreign policy implications as to why we wouldn't want it to happen. President Putin, I genuinely believe, is looking, as I've said, for a political reason. And that political reason is he runs the risk that if he travels, that what the Wagner Group did could in fact become a reality, and we could see a putsch, a coup d'etat in Russia. Many people didn't see it. I never ruled it out.
What are the chances, though, that if Putin doesn't want to make the decision, shall we say, at this point himself, that Pretoria would come out and declare him persona non grata, basically say, you're not welcome here, at least not in person? What are the chances of that even happening at this stage?
Yeah, I don't know. South Africa faces some serious dilemmas in its foreign policy at the moment. Let's just single out 2. There is the idea, the challenge to give meaningful, real effect to the idea of non-alignment. The other real challenge is it's all really having the fallout and acrimony with Western powers. And now it also has to balance a relationship with a country, albeit one at war, one that it wishes to maintain good, sound relationships with in future, if not bilaterally, then certainly within the context of BRICS. For South Africa to be pushed to declare President Putin persona non grata means that the fallout between Washington could actually look like a walk in the park if President Putin then turns on South Africa. So we have a lot of serious balancing to do at the moment to satisfy and maintain strong ties with these strategic partners, particularly China, Russia, the United States, and others.
But I wonder if Russia then is not being unfair and putting a friend and ally in South Africa in an unfair or difficult position by delaying a decision on this. Why not just declare, considering the amount of pressure that is already on South Africa and the fact that South Africa has shown that it remains a trusted ally to Moscow, refused to participate in various votes at the United Nations in the last year and a half to basically condemn the invasion of Ukraine, even when American delegations have been here, including Secretary of State Antony Blinken. South Africa has said that it remains committed to the non-aligned position and will not condemn the Russian regime.
You said, is it not unfair on the part of President Putin? I suppose the one lesson we've learned since December last year, here's a country that seeks to pursue, I'm talking about South Africa ourselves, we seek to pursue a progressive, non-aligned foreign policy. If there's one thing that world affairs has taught us since December, is that interests of states looms very large. President Putin is not about to do South Africa a favor by coming over as, after all, not this strong man, weak, in a predicament. He's going to push this out. I do think eventually President Putin will not travel. And if that does not happen, and if President Putin insists, I'm afraid the second option will have to be exercised, where I think South Africa will be almost, its hand will be forced to move the summit to another country. And we know, of course, with Beijing's power, its physical and professional prowess, it could pull off that summit overnight. President Putin is not going to do it. If the decision will be taken, it will be taken very, very late, as I've said.
And lastly then, non-alignment, which you've brought up, South Africa says that is still the position, and that is why the African delegation has met with both Presidents Zelensky and Putin in the last few weeks. But is non-alignment a real thing, or is it just diplomatic sweet talk?
I think it's a real thing. I mean, we might have made some faux pas, some mistakes in how we've executed it. For example, I'll be very blunt in saying, in the 6 months, 7 months before the very important African Peace Initiative, it was an initiative, it wasn't a mediation effort. I don't think we gave President Zelensky the time of day. It's not only that we were seen to be close to Moscow and Lady R came, it's the fact that we just did not give the one side the time of day. If there's one positive thing that came out of the rogue actions of Ambassador Brickety, I think South Africa is now very serious about non-alignment. And I will say, beyond the report that we all are waiting for, the Commission of Inquiry report, which has now been declared a report that will be secret, South Africa better have a very serious look at its arms sales in general. Where there is war taking place right now, a la Sudan, let's just make sure that we are not found wanting there. No, it's a real thing. I think it's a proper posture for South Africa, but non-alignment doesn't mean neutrality, indifference, stand aside, ostrich approach, don't say anything. It means you speak in even-handed fashion to both sides or all sides of a conflict in the interest of a very strong African doctrine, that of peaceful solutions to conflict situation and peaceful resolutions of disputes.
Professor Chris Landsberg, really fantastic to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight on News of Prime.